Obama has urged technology leaders to make it hard for terrorists to use technology to escape from justice. Hillary Clinton says social media companies can help by swiftly shutting down terrorist accounts. The companies say that they're already working with law enforcement, and any proposed legislation would do more harm than good. Should companies like Facebook and Twitter be required by law to be more actively engaged in fighting terror?
I would just say that if we were doing a better job within the government, we wouldn't need the private sector to do the things that we're asking them to do. I've had a little experience in this in the private sector myself, and what I found was a government with layers and layers of bureaucracy, of people who had some technical expertise, but they had no authority, number one. And one of the things I found about in the bureaucracy is if a lot of people have authority, nobody has authority, number one. And number two, that if you don't do anything, you don't get fired. It's only when you do something and something goes wrong, you get fired. So they do nothing. And that's what's happening in our Defense Department right now. We have a capability that they're trying to develop to play defense. We have a lot of technologists that are very skilled, and they're trying to figure out how to play defense. But what we don't have is we don't have folks who are thinking about offense. We don't have war fighters. We have technologists. Technologists are not war fighters. Technologists are thinking, how do I protect cybersecurity? How do I secure? How do I protect? And we need to have a much more dynamic, how do we go after them? How do we respond? And we need leadership that's willing to make sure that when someone attacks us, and ladies and gentlemen, they're attacking us as we speak. They're attacking us all day, every day, not just the government, but they're attacking private sector companies all day, every day. They have to learn that they're going to pay a price when they do so. And then right now, just like in every other aspect of our national security, people who attack us are not paying the price. We need a leader who will make sure that they know when they mess with America, they're going to pay a price.
Senator, would you require anything of those companies like Facebook and Twitter if you were president?
Look, Facebook and Twitter can teach us things. We can cooperate with them. We can share ideas and information. But this is a very dicey area for the government to go in and require the industry to do its job. It needs to develop that capability. We need to have responsible dialogue. But I don't think requirements are the order of the day.
Thank you, Senator.
Ms. Fiorina, the president has just issued an executive order to expand gun laws and background checks. Now, none of you on stage agree with this, but recent polls show the majority of Americans are in favor of universal background checks.
Not in this room.
It's the poll data. So
and we all believe the poll data all the time, don't we?
So tell me. Why, in your view, is the president's proposal a problem?
Oh, it's a problem for so many reasons. First of all, it is yet another lawless executive order. You see, he doesn't like the fact that Congress has rejected his ideas twice on a bipartisan basis, so he's decided he just gets to override them. Sorry, Mr. President, not the way the Constitution works. Secondly, he basically admitted in that speech that he hasn't been paying much attention to enforcing the laws we have. He said, gee, we need a few more FBI agents. That would have helped perhaps stop a tragedy here in South Carolina with Dylan Roof, a guy who clearly never should have been sold a gun. In other words, Mr. President, you're right. We need to enforce the laws we have. Let's enforce the laws we have. There are criminals running around with guns who shouldn't have them. We don't prosecute any of them, less than 1%. But I want to go back to the technology issue for a moment, if I may, as well, because in this regard, I disagree with Senator Santorum. Look, I come from the technology industry, and I can tell you there is one thing that bureaucracies don't know how to do. They do not know how to innovate. We have come 7 generations of technology since 2011. We have bureaucracies that are incapable of bringing in that innovation. So, yes, there's some very specific things that we should ask the private sector to help us with, including making sure we have the latest and greatest in algorithms to search through all these databases so that we find terrorists before they attack us, not after it's too late. And finally, we need a president who understands technology in the Oval Office. Mrs. Clinton, actually, you cannot wipe a server with a towel.
Ms. Fiorina, you said that the government
Yes,
to try and combat some of these terror threats.
As CEO of Hewlett-Packard, I was asked very specifically for some very real help. The help I was asked to provide, this is now public information, so I'm not revealing something that once was classified. We had a very large shipment of equipment, software and hardware, headed to a retail outlet. And I was called by the head of the NSA, who had an urgent need for that capability to begin laying out a program to track terrorists. We turned that truck around on a highway, and it was escorted to the headquarters of NSA. In World War II, our government went to the private sector and said, help us do things that we cannot do. The private sector has capabilities that the government does not have. There are some legal authorities that are required. The Sony attack could have been detected and repelled had legal authorities been passed in Congress allowing private networks and public networks to work together. Those legal authorities have not yet been passed. Yes, I was asked to help. I know the technology industry, they will help again, but they must be asked by a president who understands what they have.
Ms. Fiorina, thank you.
All right, Governor Huckabee, you've called President Obama's executive orders on gun control unconstitutional and completely insane. You've even told gun store owners to ignore the president's orders. Yet innocent people are dying from gun violence in cities like Detroit, Chicago, and Charleston every day. Is there anything that can be done at the federal level to prevent guns from falling into the hands of criminals?
Well, why don't we start by making sure the Justice Department never does an idiotic program like Fast and Furious, where the U.S. government put guns in the hands of Mexican drug lords and end up killing one of our border agents. You know, they want to talk about law-abiding citizens. I just find it amazing. The president keeps saying the gun show loophole. There is no gun show loophole. I promise you I've been to more gun shows than President Obama, and I bought more weapons at them, and you fill out forms. The president also says things that it's easier to get a gun than it is groceries. Again, I purchase guns, and I can assure you that it is much more difficult to purchase a firearm than it is to get the ingredients of a salad at the supermarket. What the president keeps pushing are ideas that have never worked. Ideas that would not have stopped San Bernardino, Sandy Hook, Aurora. And at some point you wonder, if you keep retrying things that don't work, maybe we should just see if we could resell all those used lottery tickets that didn't work real well, because that's the logic of just keep doing the same thing with something that has failed. Of course we want to stop gun violence, but the one common thing that has happened in most mass shootings is that they happened in gun-free zones where people who would have been law-abiding citizens, who could have stood up and at least tried to stop it, were not allowed to under the law.
Thank you, Governor Huckabee.
Governor Huckabee, an American in San Bernardino, murdered 14 people, while terrorists with Belgium and French passports murdered 130 people. We're facing a threat within our borders and from outside the United States. Those European terrorists, they could have come here at any time, given that we have a visa waiver program that enables people to travel back and forth. It exists with those countries and 36 others. If countries around the world, including many in Europe, cannot ensure that their citizens are not jihadists, why are we waiving the visa requirement at all?
Well, we shouldn't be. And that's one of the reasons that I think there are a lot of voices in our country who are saying it's time to relook at the visa program. The European Union is a failure. It's not allowed for even the economic goals that they were trying to achieve. But what we're now seeing is that it's making Europe less safe, and it's proven not to be exactly what they all thought it was going to be. Our first and foremost responsibility in this country, and the first responsibility of the President of the United States, is protect America and protect Americans. We have a president who seems to be more interested in protecting the reputation and image of Islam than he is protecting us. And I'm going to be very clear that when this president makes comments like he did the other night that we have to be so careful because we don't want to offend Muslims, he needs to read his own FBI crime stats from last year, which would show him that of the hate crimes in the country, over 5,500, about 1,100 were religious hate crimes. And of those, 58% were directed toward Jews, only 16% directed toward Muslims. Maybe what the president should have talked about the other night is how we ought to be more careful in the anti-Semitic comments that are going toward American Jews than toward Muslims, because by 3 times as many, they're being targeted for religious hate crimes.
If you get rid of the visa waiver program, does that shut down international commerce?
It does not shut down international commerce, but it may slow it down. And you know what? A slowed down commerce that is making us safer is worth it. This lady who came and joined with the San Bernardino killer had passed 3 background checks, and that's why a lot of Americans didn't buy it when the president said, we'll bring in Syrian refugees, but don't worry, we'll check them out. We have a lot of confidence in a president who told us that we could keep our doctor, we could keep our health insurance, it'd cost us less, and now the latest is, if you like your gun, you can keep it too, and frankly, we don't buy it. We don't believe it. He's lost his credibility, and his inept inability to work with Congress and pass legislation has led him to do what I never even imagined doing as a governor, and that's just going and doing it my own way. That's why we elect a president, is to lead, is to be able to shepherd things through. And if I can do it with a 90% Democrat legislature in Arkansas, there's no excuse for any president not being able to lead in Washington if he knows what the heck he's doing when he gets there.